11:55 a.m. 42 seconds, November 13, 2022.
911 location of your emergency.
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the White, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah.
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, but we gotta go check. But we have to. Is he passed out? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
20, you said?
Yes, 20. Here, 20.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people.
Okay, sorry, they just gave me the phone.
Is she breathing?
Hello?
Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
You talk to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them.
Hello.
Okay. I have already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
Say that again. There's a police here right now.
Okay. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
We don't have one. I think yes. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, we have one.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
11:59 a.m. 49 seconds, November 13, 2022.
Well, this is how it all started. About a week ago, we have had some unsealing of very important documents in the Idaho 4 Bryan Kohberger case. Crazy. I followed this case. Now I'm going to get all choked. Excuse me. I've been following this case for quite some time now, since its inception. And here we are, 3 years into this and finally, hopefully, getting to a trial here in August. That is when the trial is set for this summer in Boise, Idaho. And it's been kind of a litany of information. We just had a whole bunch of more document dumps over the last couple of days. So I wanted to get back into getting myself familiar with this case. The funny thing is, I was just looking at my thumbnail. I spelled Kohberger wrong. I forgot the H in Kohberger, so I have to go back and update my thumbnail. But welcome in, everybody. It's late here on this Friday night. I get it. This is not the central focus on the channel lately, but sometimes it's good to kind of pull away from what we've been doing over the last year and a half on this channel and get back to things that kind of built the channel. And I'm anticipating this case. I am anticipating for it to happen. I've done probably over 400 videos and live streams on this case when it first started. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of fell out of it for over the last year and a half. Obviously, you've been very centrally focused on the Karen Read case, as you all know. But it's good to go back and kind of refamiliarize yourself, especially with a ton of document dumps over this last week. And, we're finally getting the details that I wish we would have gotten way back when this started. Everything went under seal. Everything went under seal pretty immediately in this case. And I think there's just certain things that should have been let out, certain pieces of information that should have been put out there, because it would have cut down a lot of the conspiracy that's been in this case. Every case is not a conspiracy, but it would have cut down a lot of that backroom chatter and probably taken a lot of pressure off the families having to defend themselves all the time, having to defend the witnesses, having to defend themselves in this case. But here we are, and I'm hoping we can get through a lot of this tonight. I personally haven't had time to read through 300 pages of documents, but I've been kind of sourcing some videos together to help us along tonight. I'm going to play a lot of Banfield with Brian Enton. Brian Enton's been such a great contributor to researching and reporting on this case. We're going to hear a lot from them. And I put some presentations together tonight. So again, we're going to sit back. We're going to go through, pretty much what I could put together here on the Idaho 4 case, get us kind of caught up to speed. And I think I'm going to start doing these probably once a week, maybe twice a week, added into my regular program as we, kind of filter through and get through the trial process in Karen Read, because this is a case, and I'm going to kind of rubber stamp it right here on the channel. This is a case that I will be actively involved with once it starts going to trial and getting there again. So we got a lot to go through tonight. I'm good to go for a couple hours here, and we'll get into the presentation. So let me pull up my my screen here. I can't believe I spelled Kohberger wrong in my thumbnail. That's okay. I can update it pretty easy. I can do it after the show. I know people are going to be like, you spelled it wrong. If I can find how to share my screen here, hang on. Let's go down to here. All right, let me pull up my screen. Present, full screen. All right, here we go. Welcome in. Nice to see some moderators here, some subscribers. We're going to share the screen, and we're going to get into a lot of this Kohberger stuff tonight. All right, so what I can gather, I played the 911 call that pretty much opened this all up. Judge Hepler has been unsealing documents, and we first had the 911 transcript that didn't have all the full we had the 911 transcript, but then we had text messages between Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, but all the gaps really weren't filled in, and we're seeing more of that now, which has been really good because it gives us an opportunity to kind of start piecing this all together. So what I have come up with some details that have just come out recently. Obviously, we just heard the 911 call, and that started with the 911 call transcript. It got released, and then the 911 call got leaked. And I'm going to tell you what I did when I heard the 911 call, and it just literally went out like wildfire. But this is actually kind of funny. When we get to the tail end of this presentation, you're going to see what I did. And I thought the response was hilarious because It had already been a good 24 hours by the time the 911 call was out there. And the response from the Moscow Police Department was hilarious. But anyway, so we have Kohberger allegedly bought a K-bar knife on Amazon before the murders and then browsed for another days later. His click history shows that he was on Amazon again, looking for another K-bar knife, looking for a knife sheath. I know there's going to be a lot of argument about this. I know Ann Taylor saying, well, of course, it's the algorithm that put him into that, and it's a shared account with his family. But I think he's going to have some more problems because you'll see here. Kohberger gives the thumbs up selfie. That's 6 hours after the alleged slaughtering of 4 University Idaho students, and that was at 10:30 a.m. in the morning. You can see him up there. He's got washed hair, slicked back hair, this very gaunt look, and he's got the thumbs up, and he's taking it in front of his shower, and you can kind of see the shower curtain off to the side. Now, when I looked at this, when I saw this selfie for the first time, I went, gee, he looks really feminine. And I kind of started to think about this. Now, we get it. He's a vegan. He has the very strict diet. But I almost wondered if he was trying to change his appearance in the fact of he goes, if he is the murderer, which I have said on here a million times, I believe that they do have the right guy in this, and a lot of the new evidence is pointing in his direction. But if he is the murderer, maybe he thought to let's lose a bunch of weight and look really gaunt before I go in there, because if I get caught in the house visually and maybe someone sees me coming in or out, I don't have my face mask on, they may mistake me as a female, considering how many students come and go out of that house. And especially you have 4 of them that are 4, 5, 6, 6 of them living inside the house. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other college girls that came and went from that house. Obviously, we saw previous body cam footage released of noise complaints, and there was parties there all the time. So I wonder if that was kind of in the back of his mind. I could just be throwing shit against the wall, but I was just like, it looks really feminine. So we also heard about the obviously the Kohberger thick eyebrow selfie, and that's very telling in all of this too, because what did Dylan Mortensen say in her statement about the perpetrator that came into the home? Well, they had thick, bushy eyebrows, and I know that the prosecution intends to show this selfie during their presentation. So we had the Amazon search. We'll talk a little bit about this, and I grabbed these quotes from some articles online. It says, quote, applying the test for relevancy first. Kohberger's clicked activity, which shows a purchase of a K-bar knife and sheath before the homicide, makes it more probable than it would be without the evidence that the K-bar sheath found at the crime scene was Bryan Kohberger's. Latah County Prosecutor Ashley Jennings wrote in a court filing made public Wednesday evening. Second, Kohberger's click activity after the homicides makes it more probable than it would be without the evidence that Kohberger had a reason to search for a K-bar knife sheath after the homicides. I took another quote here. It says, this is the smoking gun evidence in this case. A former federal prosecutor from Los Angeles who's been following this case. We go on here, ties to the crime. And I just threw some basic ones out there and added in some new evidence that we have found inside these documents. So we have the white Hyundai Elantra that has been seen in and around the time of the murders. On video, they have that. I know a lot of people have debated it. It's not a Hyundai Elantra. It's a Forte, whatever it may be. But they feel that this is very strong evidence that it is Bryan Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra that went to the scene and left the scene and then went back at about 9 or 9:30 in the morning to go back and see. And obviously, we now found out that the new updated timeline is showing that 911 call from inside King Road wasn't made until around noon. So maybe he was just going back to see if there was any activity around the house, or bingo, forgot the knife sheath there. Maybe I can go in and try to get it. So obviously we heard about the Amazon K-Bar knife purchase, the click activity days after the murder. We have the DNA on the K-Bar knife sheath left at the crime scene under Maddie and Kaylee, the bushy eyebrow selfie hours later after the murders. And we know that Dylan Mortensen described again in her recollection of the incident in seeing this person inside the house that they had bushy eyebrows. We'll move on here. So we have possibly return to the scene. They say they have evidence of that. I think there's going to be a mountain of digital evidence, video that's going to come up, and also a lot of the cast information in this case. Once they start placing that, and geofencing, I think is going to nail this guy down pretty much in and around that area at the time of the murders. We have the eyewitness, Dylan Mortensen, and now we have found out that she was 3 feet away from the alleged killer and perpetrator that night inside King Road. And here's the big one, and I was pondering about this today. We have a witness. The prosecution says they have a witness that is going to testify that Kohberger had a K-Bar knife. I said, well, who could this possibly be? Could this be a family member that's going to flip on Kohberger and testify, yes, he had this knife in and around the time of March before he left to go out to Washington State to go to school in Pullman? Could this be a family member that flips? They're so grief-stricken over this, the destruction that Bryan has caused. And maybe they get up on the stand and say, yes, I saw the knife, mom, dad, sister, whatever it may be. I saw the knife in Bryan's room, or I saw him pack the knife and leave to go to school with it. It is a possibility. And you're also going to hear here in one of these presentations that Howard Bloom, that has written tons of articles and he wrote a book about this. He actually heard that Bryan Kohberger's sister, there's a Bryan Kohberger's sister is actually in the process of writing a book about this, but it cannot be released because of the gag order. But I'm pretty sure that after that gag order is released and lifted, this book may come out. And that kind of tells you something there. I'd be really curious to see what is going to be in that book. Now, after I heard about the 911 call, of course, I wanted to see what the Moscow Police Department would say to me about this investigation. So I FOIA'd the 911 call because I wanted a copy of it. And they basically turned me down. They basically said that my request falls under the Idaho Public Records Law, and they're going to give me all this bunch of bullshit that they can't release it to me, which is hilarious because it was already released all over online, and they wouldn't give it to me. So I thought it was funny, and I always throw out FOIA requests when I hear certain things are information is leaked or put out there, and then you always get the nice, kind letter back from a legal assistant or whatever it may be, and they just say, yeah, you're not going to get it, which is hilarious. I think that's just, we already know that it's out there. All right, let me get into something that I wanted to make note of last time on the last live that I did, and I talked about security camera locations, and there were locations that they grabbed video from, and I found this to be pretty curious, and I forgot to share this last time, but I'm going to bring up my Google Earth, and what I did was I went in and grabbed out of one of the first documents that were just recently released about, I don't think it was in the 911 call, but it was in that kind of section of documents that were unsealed. I went in and kind of plugged in all the locations of cell phone data that they were trying to, I'm sorry, not cell phone, security camera data footage that they requested. And I went in and kind of put all these places together. But I want to talk about a couple of them here. And one that's very interesting here is Albertsons. Now, we do know at some point that it has been said that Bryan Kohberger later that day, the next day, visited an Albertsons. And I found this kind of funny. If you just trace up There was a Costco. This Costco, they're looking for video footage as well. But let's just kind of navigate this path a little bit. And what happens? You end up down near the Snake River. And I'm kind of wondering, and this is another place that he visited that day, or there's video that is being subpoenaed from here. I'm kind of wondering, is it possible that he could have drove down along this coastline here before going to that Albertsons and thrown that K-bar knife or any evidence in that Snake River being so close to where he was? And we do know that he had to pass along the Snake River too the night that he went back home, and there was about an hour gap in his time frame. So that's a question that I've been thinking about as well too. But here's something even more interesting. And this was kind of wild when I saw this. Let's go to Bryan Kohberger's parents' house. So let me click this. So I'm going to go all the way back out to Pennsylvania. Here's Bryan Kohberger's parents' house. Well, look where they wanted to pull security footage from. Indian Mount Lake. That is about 1.5 miles from Bryan Kohberger's parents' house. And there's a security camera piece of footage that they want from there, and they got. And what do they have there? Well, this is a real big lake. 1.5 miles from his parents' house. You got a lake, you got a body of water, security camera there. Is it a possibility that they caught Bryan Kohberger up there throwing something into that lake, throwing trash in and around this campsite, spreading evidence in and around there? I found it very interesting that they have something on this security video that they want and they got. And this is in evidence. And I thought that was very, very interesting when I saw that. I mean, it's 1.5 miles north of his parents' house. His parents' house right here. If you drive about 1.5 miles north, you're going to right into that big lake, and right around here, there is security camera footage that they want and they got. So just food for thought. Just food for thought. All right, let's get into something before we get into the we've talked about the 911 call. We're going to get into the text messages, but this was something that, and I don't know if you've all seen this, but back in May 21st, 2023, and I think it was even a week before that because this is a replay. But I want to play something for you. When I used to have an old friend up on the panel here, my friend Laura used to come up and talk a lot of the Idaho case. We were deeply in this. We would talk through the documents when they were all released, and we started doing these lives. And I want to play something that we figured out. Now, this is a year ago we figured this out, and it now just came to fruition what was going on inside that house. And I'm going to play a little bit of a clip here. Let's listen. Very important. I want everybody to pay attention, and I want everybody to read this, and I want everybody to listen, because it's an opinion. It's alleged. The final mention of Funk in the affidavit states that the police reviewed forensic downloads from her phone to determine the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. Forensic downloads to determine that the homicides happened between these times. Hang on. Yeah, and I just cut that off before I get to the point. Christina, thank you so much for the $10 on Venmo. She says, thank you for continuing your coverage. I followed you from before LTL, and you brought the truth to both Karen and BK, and your message got cut off a little bit, but I appreciate the $10 on Venmo. Let me go back here. I went too far. Okay, here we go. To determine the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. Forensic downloads to determine that the homicides happened between these times. They were fucking texting each other.
Did you hear that?
Did you hear that? They were texting each other because there's timestamps on those texts. They probably heard noises. Now, I'm not going to go anywhere and say they're involved and they set all this up and blah, 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 blah. But it leads me to believe, based on this information, there were some text conversations going on. Did you hear that? Are you up?
if
Possibly.
they were asleep, or say even if Bethany was asleep. Yeah, I mean, we're just talking about Bethany right now. If she was asleep at that time, there wouldn't be anything going on her phone between 4 and 4:25 or whenever she fell asleep until whenever she woke up. So why
based on the forensic downloads of their phones, that they would determine between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. There's timestamps. They were talking to each other. It has to be it. Or they were texting their roommates going, what's going on? What's going on? Or there's phone calls. What's going on up there? Brenda thinks it's crazy. It's, I think, in a good way. Wow, that's crazy. You know, that reaction. But it's quite possible this is what happened. And this, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to show the chat. Here's the chat that we spitballed. Yeah. I said to you, I somehow think Bethany Funk has something on her phone. And then I clipped this little thing that I just put up. The final mention of Funk's affidavit. The police say the forensic downloads are from. And the information on her phone leads the police think what time the crimes happened. She's got something. And you said right away, she and Dylan were texting. And I went, bingo. Yeah. And, you know, we were pretty close. I mean, that was a year ago. And no one was really talking about that. And that was pretty good. I mean, we figured out a lot of stuff that now that we have the documents, we're seeing, you know, more of that. And it's like, oh, wow, we were right on that. And I talked about the Amazon. And this is the beautiful thing about all of this now. And I'm going to drop this link. If anybody's interested in reading through any of the documents that have been up there forever, you can click this link, save it in your browser, and you can go check out all these documents. But what I want to call everybody's attention to, if you look now, you can start kind of piecing together why everything was sealed and why everything was under seal. And I want to go down here for an example is, where is it? Okay, so here you have Google, Reddit, Snap. We've heard a lot about Snapchat lately, the Snap conversations, TikTok, and I'm going to go down a little bit more here because the one that I really want to get to, you have Google, you have TikTok, Twitter, Google again, DoorDash. Obviously, we know about the DoorDash, K-Bar Knives. You know, and these were all documents that came out in 2023, but everything was under seal. This is interesting. The Match platforms, maybe there was some conversation in there. We had Snap, and then I know there's one for Amazon as well. But now, yeah, right here, order to seal and redact Amazon. But now that you can look ahead, you can start looking back and going, oh, okay, that's why that document was sealed, because now we found out Kohberger purchased a K-Bar knife, and then after, within the next day, he's on there clicking around on Amazon, looking for another replacement knife and sheath. So it's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. But as now things are coming out unsealed, you can go back and start piecing this all together through the history of this case. And I love stuff like this. All right, let's hear more. The 911 call to me is very odd. No mention of blood, no mention of the scene. And I want to pull up Megyn Kelly here with Howard Bloom. They're going to play through the entire call. Obviously, we already listened to it. I played it in the very beginning of the show, but I want to hear what they have to say and opine on this. Here we go.
Wow. Incredibly disturbing. Just so the audience understands that the murders happened at 4 a.m. That call did not get placed until almost noon the next morning, 11:55 a.m. And for all this time, they have not released the 911 call. It wasn't until this week we finally got to hear it. We believe, not totally confirmed, but we believe that the girl who made the call initially was Bethany Funk, one of the two roommates who survived. The other roommate is named Dylan Mortensen.
Yeah, and then you also hear on that call, and I want to kind of put this in there, and they may talk about this, is you hear someone say, well, I live next door to them. So there's a neighbor that's there. And then on the call, you can hear someone that sounds like they're trying to wake Xana. which is very interesting. A male voice in the background goes, Xana. It is a very odd call. I think that whole situation afterwards is very odd. I know that there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, well, Dylan and Bethany have to be in on it. They must have known something. You know, that's been speculated a lot, that there was more students involved in this thing, or it's not Kohberger and it's actually all of them that are involved in it. It's very, very weird. The call is very weird. The situation that's explained on the phone is very strange. But I'm trying to think in the sense of, you know, they keep saying like, oh, it's just someone that passed out, Could it be that there's a group of kids there, and we know that there was, to not startle or worry anybody else? I mean, I don't know. And that's kind of the strange thing about this. When you try to put all the pieces to this puzzle together, it doesn't make sense. It is strange, but I don't know. I've never been in a serious traumatic situation like that, when I've just possibly seen 4 of my roommates brutally murdered, blood all over the place. I wouldn't even know what to make of it. And then you have to consider, now that we're hearing more of the text streams that were going on and the conversations that were happening on Snapchat, it sounded to me inside that house, it was very, very violent. There was a lot of noise, and those kids probably didn't know what to make of it. And it to me, it sounds like it was very foreign noises that were never heard inside that house. And it probably scared the shit out of everybody. But again, still very weird. Why was the call placed so late? I know, I get it. But we're probably going to have to just wait till trial till that all comes out. But let's hear what Megyn Kelly has to say.
She's the one who saw an intruder, which they were trying to tell the 911 operator, who wasn't in the mood to talk about what happened the night before. But those are the 2 surviving roommates. So we believe that's Bethany Funk, who could barely get sentences out. And Howard, the remarkable thing, of course, is that they're talking about their roommate having been drunk and she isn't waking up. And just the one roommate, they're not. I am assuming that they had found Xana Kernodle, who was on the 2nd floor with her boyfriend Ethan, because they are not saying 4. They only had 3 of the female roommates, but they're not saying 4 of our friends are dead. They're saying one girl's passed out and she was drunk last night. We think she's dead.
Right. It seems that they did not even go up to the 3rd floor. What's so, horrific, you just listen to that hyperventilation. It's so poignant what they went through. And the idea, first of all, that they did not make the call, as you pointed out, until about 8 hours after the crimes took place. And it's just been released that they were up that morning, one of the girls at 7:30, another at about 8:20, and they were making other calls and texts. And they still wait until 11:50 or so to call the police. And that's sort of hard to understand. And yet, these children, and they are children, were overwhelmed by this. And part of their reluctance, why they might not have called the police, and the fact that they were drunk, they didn't want to face the reality. We all hate to face impossible things, but you can see from the dispatcher how the kids, the students in this college town felt the adults react to them. We saw that on the police videos earlier when they come to the house on the noise disturbances calls.
Now we're finding out too that Dylan Mortensen, I think, was interviewed at least 4 to 5 times about this whole situation. And I just saw someone in the chat talk about the shower curtain that I brought up. And I don't know, like right here on the edge of this photo, could the shower curtain be pulled all the way aside? And I think you said, like, authorities said there is no shower curtain, but it's cropped. But I don't know. It kind of looks like there is one right here. Like, what is this? See that line that is a different color? Right here. Just on the edge of the photo. Let's see. What was this? Robin said, I don't think there's a shower curtain in the photo. The curtain was missing, according to the authorities. Is that definitely in stone? Because I see, I don't know. I mean, it looks like there's another line here. It could be tiles, but I saw this and I was like, all right, well, I don't know. Is there a shower curtain there? You can see a ring in the back here. That you definitely can see. Actually, no, that's just his hair. But it is odd. There's no shower curtain rings, but I don't know what this edge is right here. Let's pull that video back up. Let's see. Where was it? This is where StreamYard fails. And I've said this all the time. Just give us the ability to cue tabs. So you just have the tabs in the background and just go click, one click in transition. It's just ridiculous. We have to drop the screen. Then we have to share the screen. Then we have to bring it up. And we have to go through all the things that we possibly could bring up. It's just annoying. StreamYard, fix it. You're better than this. All right, let's play this.
How the cops go out of their way to dump their beer on the sidewalk. There's a real antagonism between the students and the town, and that adds, I think, to their reluctance to have reached out for help. But also,
yeah. Well, I was just going to say it's very eerie. So that she calls and says something is happening, and they say one of the roommates is passed out. And they're clearly referring to Xana Kernodle, because when she says, how old is she? She says she's 20. And both Kaylee and Maddie were 21. And when you're that age, you know exactly the number of years you are. You know what I mean? Like your age means a lot to you, especially when you're 20 versus 21. College roommates would absolutely have all the other ages in their heads of their roommates. So she's saying she's 20. So she clearly found Xana. But where was Ethan? Because our understanding was, if memory serves, I didn't go back and look this up, that he was found closer to the doorway of the bedroom that he was in with Xana. They don't mention him.
I don't think she's found Xana yet. What I think, and the way I reconstruct it, is that the door was closed and they were knocking, because when they go up, I think it's Hunter Johnson, one of the friends, goes up and knocks on the door.
And he's on that phone call.
Right, and he's calling their names. He says, Xana, Ethan. And then, to his credit, I mean, the young man's a hero. He says, get out, get out. He insists that they run away. He doesn't want them to confront what's in there.
You saw it.
I'm not sure they actually even get a glimpse into the room. He shoos them away. I don't think they ever really saw the bodies. They just couldn't get a response. And that's what was scaring them. They were afraid to go into the room. They knew what they would find. But they couldn't quite face this unthinkable reality. And so they kept outside. And Hunter was the one who went in, and he behaved, like a knight in shining armor in a difficult situation.
That makes more sense. Because they're not saying there's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, you and I have talked about how there was so much.
That's what I kind of thought too, is that like someone goes in there and sees it, they're not going to reveal what's going on to keep everybody calm. And that's the angle I kind of came at this as well.
Blood, it seeped through the walls of the house.
Bad.
They're not saying that. They're like, we're not sure. She was drunk last night. She maybe passed out. So clearly, but call 911. And so they clearly thought something was wrong. Maybe it was that she wasn't responding to texts and I don't know why they're not talking about Kaylee and Maddie. Kaylee, I think, wasn't even supposed to be there that night. She'd stayed over. She had moved out, but she was back visiting Maddie. But they're not mentioning Maddie. Nobody seems to be aware that there also might be an issue on the third floor. All of it is just so strange. And then we have to talk about the thing you just mentioned, which is the text messages that morning. But first, make your point. Go ahead.
They had intimations that something was wrong, because you can see after the night before, the morning before, at 4 a.m. approximately, when she confronts Kohberger, and then this is Dylan, and then she goes back into her room. The two surviving roommates are texting back and forth, and they'd say, "I'm freaked out. This. Yes, I don't know what's happening." And finally, Bethany, who's in the first floor room, tells her, "Run, come down here. And it's almost like a prayer. She wants her to get there safely. And they stay there together until about 7:30 the next morning when they wake up. And again, they start texting and calling people, but they don't get to the police. They're afraid to get to the next level. They don't want to go into that room themselves, and they don't want to call the police. It's all too impossible to deal with. And it's a tragedy, I think, that the tape wasn't released earlier, because for the past 2.5 years, these two young women, the surviving roommates, have been slandered, libeled, their characters have been impugned if they somehow were involved in some sort of cover-up. And you can just listen to this tape and you can see that they were not involved in the events, but they are victims too.
Unbelievable. So you've got, well, now we know, this is all new. You've got the two surviving witnesses, because all along we knew that Dylan had seen the perpetrator, had seen an intruder that night wearing a COVID-type mask with bushy eyebrows, around 6 feet tall, in the house at 4 a.m., in the 4 a.m. hour. And that she saw him. It was unclear whether he saw her, but she froze. He left. She went back into her room, and we knew that they didn't call 911 until noon the next day. So 8 hours passed before she calls 911. And it's been one of the big mysteries in this case. Why didn't she call 911? She saw an intruder in the house in the middle of the night. And we know from the police affidavit, she said she was in a frozen shock phase, and that's why she didn't call. But that just seemed very strange that it would take you 8 hours, like you eventually would call. But then they were saying, well, it was a neighbor that came in and called. And you mentioned Hunter. Yes, he did come in and call. But we understand that was Bethany, and we think Dylan was also involved. So these two roommates, now we know, were texting, were scared, were in the one ran to the other one's room. They were in there hiding. And it appears that they may have gotten a hold of Hunter to come over to help check things out. But we still don't really understand the delay. Why that didn't happen earlier than noon.
The delay is irrational. It makes no sense, but this was an irrational moment. They were going through an experience that was overwhelming them. They couldn't process it, and they didn't want to process it. They refused to confront the logic of what was happening. Just as when Dylan sees the assailant in the house, she can't speak out. That's what I believe saves her life. If she had spoken up, I think she would have been a victim too. But because she's too overwhelmed, she retreats into her silence and goes into her room. The intruder leaves the house and she survives. But, this is really a story about people who are overwhelmed by events and don't want to face what is happening because it's too large. I
kind of say this. So I have experience with managing, what do they call that? Gen Z. So these kids would be Gen Z. And I'll tell you this from my experience, and I'm sure that any moms or dads that are watching this show, they can probably attest to this. I notice with Gen Z? Yeah. I notice with them that they are very afraid of confrontation. They are very afraid to kind of like stand up for themselves. I know I've had some situations at work and they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what to say. I don't like this. And I'm like, well, did you talk to the boss? Well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to. I don't know what's going to happen. I'll just leave it alone. I don't know. I'm like, you got to stick up for yourself. You need to say something. I don't know. So I get that a lot. And maybe that's what happened here in this situation, that they were really afraid to confront the situation or take on that heavy load and have to try to process it. And maybe that's why the delay. It is very interesting. It is very, very, very interesting. And again, we're just going to have to wait for trial to get more detail. Let's play the rest of this
book,
here.
Coincidentally, about how Kohberger's father, as he's going across country with his son, as they're leaving for Christmas break, he too is getting intimations that something is wrong, but he can't quite go all the way. He can't make this realization that his son is a monster. And in the same way, these two young women can't somehow cross this Rubicon of what has really happened in their house, what has really happened to their friends.
All right. All right. What I want to do here is Ashley Banfield now has a podcast channel, which is pretty interesting on YouTube. It's starting to gain some steam here. But she had Brian Enton on the other night, and they went through a lot of the documents and gave a lot of great information here and sorted through time that I just don't have right now. So I'd love to play through that. We can kind of piece some of this stuff together. They did a really, really great job peeling through these documents and kind of picking out the really good stuff here. And I always like Brian Enton's reporting on this. He's phenomenal and has done a great job. Got to actually talk to Kaylee Consalves's family and stays in touch with Stephen Christie quite a bit. But we'll play through this. I think this is going to help explain some of the documents. We're going to see more of the text stream that is filled in. And they're going to get into a lot of the other things that have been coming up lately in this.
Hey, welcome to Drop Dead Serious, everyone. I'm Ashley Banfield, and in this very special episode, we're talking about the University of Idaho student murders. Just when we thought we had a full picture of what happened that tragic night, I just got my hands on some brand new court filings that dropped in Bryan Kohberger's case. And friends, these are absolutely explosive, and I am finding out things
Brian on
since we learned that a knife sheath had been left behind at the murder scene. And then since they matched a tiny speck of DNA on the snap of that sheath to Bryan Kohberger himself. So walk me through what these documents say about a knife purchase.
Yeah, and there's so many documents. I've got like 100 pages like laid out all over my.
The funny thing about this, I'll give some context to it. They did this like really late at night. I think it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning because they both were kind of sorting through these documents. And I think basically they were on like FaceTime and they're like, all right, let's just do an episode about this. So it worked out really well. And they did a really good job kind of piecing this together. Here we go.
Bedroom right now. But this is definitely, I think, the biggest thing to come out of this latest document dump. That sometime between March 20th and March 30th, so that would be about 8 months before the murders, Bryan Kohberger bought off of Amazon.com a K-bar knife, a sheath, and a sharpener, which, again, when you think back to what else we know, that they found a K-bar knife sheath with Bryan Kohberger's DNA on it at the murder scene. I mean, this is really, really... Yeah, there it is. This is really damning evidence.
For the podcast audience, like, I've got this knife and sheath in my hand for the YouTube audience.
Yeah, and by the way, let me just do this real quick. I'm going to interrupt this. And this is a, let's see. This is a K-bar knife. I actually bought one off Amazon. And I wanted to see if you could actually do it. And this is what it looks like. And it is a very strong knife. It is a killing machine. It would not take much to do damage with this to someone. And I'll just play the video here so you can see it. That is a very, very sharp knife. Look at the sub count back then, 3,400. But that is And I kind of point out the bottom of the handle here is almost like a hammer. It's a very indestructible. I mean, it's a marine knife. I mean, it's made to be the last bit of defense if you lose your firearm, to use this to defend yourself. And it's a powerful, powerful piece of steel. Yeah, Cindy says she remembers that episode. But that's K-bar. All right, let's go back to Brian Enton and Ashley Banfield. Here we go.
So you can see it right here, but this is an exact replica of, take the knife out.
Thank you, Cindy.
That's the exact replica of the K-bar knife. It gives me the willies. And then the sheath is described as a sheath with USMC, United States Marine Corps, that's stamped on it. This one has that stamp, and so does the one that they found under Maddie's body as well. So yeah, so there was a purchase 8 months before the murders by Bryan Kohberger on Amazon of a knife, a sheath, and a sharpener. I mean, what kind of criminology student would be that dumb to have that kind of a purchase record of a murder weapon if he's the killer?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that you have to wonder about. If he was so careful allegedly about these other things, wearing the gloves and making sure there was almost nothing in his car when they searched it, in the house, not a lot of evidence there that we know of.
It's
But
wild,
this would
huh?
have been a big mistake on his part, that thinking that they
So-
weren't going to go back to his search history.
Well, as I was reading through the documents before I got a little further, I didn't even notice that he'd actually, according to the prosecutors, gone on Amazon again
And clicked
after
afterwards.
the murders and searched for K-bar knife. And
So there's a couple of things about that, and I have to think about it, and this is a good stop right here. So I was thinking about this, like, why would someone do that? Okay, well, one, you've just had to. All right, let's say you are this psychopathic killer, okay, and we saw the selfie. He's got that smirk on his face, kind of like, I got away with it, okay. Why would you go back and click for another knife? Well, I had to discard it. A lot of people think it is in the Snake River. I possibly think it's there as well. I think he ditched it, or it's just somewhere that only he knows, in a ground, a tree, whatever it may be. He hid it somewhere. I don't have my killing machine anymore. Maybe he was going to do this again or try to do it again, since he seemed that he got away with it, okay, with that celebration selfie. So what do I need to do? I need to buy another weapon because I'm going to kill again. Or how about this? Well, I got to come up with some kind of defense here. So if they nail this down to being like a K-bar knife, or they nail this down to, possibly being me, I order a K-bar knife, or somehow obtain another one and just say, no, I've had to have my knife. I've had it the whole time. So there's kind of a couple ways to go with that. But I think this guy was happy that he felt like he got away with it, and he was looking to actually kill again. So wild, really wild stuff.
and sheath.
Yeah. Yeah, let me read you this part. And again, there's so much to this new document.
Apparently, what I'm hearing, and Cindy says, good point, Brian. Apparently, what I'm hearing is the defense in all of this is going to be, well, someone stole Kohberger's knife. We know he purchased it back in March. He drove with it all the way out to Washington. He had it. And the rumor from the defense and Taylor is, well, someone stole it. Someone stole it from him. That's going to be the defense
Yeah,
here.
I missed this the first time too, but it basically says purchase of, this is the prosecution's filing.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of this
click activity on Amazon. Purchase of a K-bar knife with sheath before the murders, which is what we just talked about, and his click activity indicating a search for a knife with sheath after the murders. So not only did he buy the knife, the sheath, and the sharpener 8 months before the murders, but according to this document, they're saying, Ashley, that after the murders, he searched on Amazon for a knife and a sheath.
Wild.
So my theory, and I don't think I'm too crazy here, is that if he's the killer, he, does all that crazy driving and dispenses with bloody clothes, bloody knife, forgets that, the sheath is back up on the, at the murder scene, and comes home, cleans up. We'll get to that in a second, because something else dropped that shows the potential of a big old shower at 10:30 in the morning. And then realizes, maybe as a criminology student who thinks he's smarter than everybody else, boy, I better have a knife and a sheath in case I'm ever questioned.
Here we go.
And
I
they
just
say,
read
well, you
that.
bought one.
Yep.
Look, you bought a knife and a sheath back in, 8 months prior to the murders. Where is it? And then he could go upstairs and hand them
Here
a
it
brand
is.
new clean knife and sheath and say, here it is.
Yep.
Not thinking
Yeah.
that maybe they'd search all your Amazon records, not just the ones from back in March.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Or how about this? They just go up to question him, and he says, no, let me just go upstairs. And maybe he's thinking, if I go upstairs and I produce this knife, they're not going to really look into me too much longer. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he was thinking that, like, maybe this, we roll the dice and I go upstairs, I bring this knife downstairs. And no, I've had it the whole time. I bought it. It's been sitting in my room. I was just interested in it. We know he was a security guard. Maybe I was interested in becoming, maybe active in the military or whatever it may be. And he shows the knife. He says, no, I have it. It's right here. And that in his mind may be thinking, and he just rolls the dice and says, well, maybe they turn away from me as the suspect. All right.
I mean, why would he be searching for a knife in a sheath? Just trying to think, like, what could the defense possibly say? Maybe they could say, oh, he was a criminology student and he was very interested in these murders that had happened very, very close to him. And this is the kind of stuff that he studies. And he was just looking to see what would it cost? How easy would it be to get a knife? I mean,
even though they would say to him, well, what do you mean? You bought one already. Where is it?
Right.
Where's
And
the
your
one you
DNA
bought
is on
in March? Yeah.
And your DNA's on the sheath, by the way. But
By the way, BT dubs. Yeah. Not good. This is what, again, in the business of what Bryan and I do, it's called bad facts. I would call these horrendous facts. Like I say, these are nails in the coffin.
And I've been wondering, Ash, like with this stuff that's coming out, and I know anything can happen, but it's like, what are they thinking going into this trial? You know, like you have to wonder, like, everybody's like, is there going to be a plea deal? And I don't think there will be, because I don't think they're going to take death off the table because the families want. But it's just not looking good for the defense.
No, I don't think you need a plea deal in this case. And I don't know that the families want it. I certainly know that I talked to Steve tonight. He is so relieved by this information. He's so relieved that there's an Amazon track to a knife and a sheath and a sharpened.
And keep in mind, the prosecution or anybody hasn't told these families anything. So they're getting the drop as we're getting it too, which is fucking crazy. I mean, it's almost like heartless. Like, at least tell them something. And believe me, I guarantee you things have been leaked in and around that town or been leaked to those families. They know. I think Steve knows a lot more than what they said that they've known in all of this. I truly believe that. I think people have been just leaking stuff left and right to them. But now they have it in an official court document. It's solid evidence on the table. You know, there is the Amazon search. There is that he went back and clicked, a day later and tried to possibly buy another knife. So you're seeing this all, starting to come together. And again, I have to agree. This doesn't look good for the defense. I mean, I was watching The Lawyer today. He did like a 12-minute video on this, and he's like, it's not good. Like, it's not good. So very interesting. Here we go.
Purchased by Kohberger. He is so happy that this stuff is just lining up. He calls them facts. He's mad at the internet for being nasty to the roommates and imagining all these other scenarios where maybe BK gets off, and he's just feeling better and better now that the gag is starting to crack and more facts and more bad facts for Bryan are coming through.
I agree.
Yeah, and it is starting to crack. Oh my gosh, like all the stuff we got tonight. Wow.
I know, right? Okay, well, speaking of that, this photo. Oh my God. You sent it to me first. You got it first, and you sent it to me and said, look at this. This is 10:31 a.m. on the morning of the murders. So explain to the audience.
We just had a few more people join the room. Please make sure here on YouTube, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is your first time over here. Give this video a thumbs up. It helps get it out into the algorithm. Again, taking a step back from Karen Reed tonight, getting back into the Idaho 4 case. This case is going to be huge. It is going to be blown wide open. I will be covering it this summer, and I do plan on going out to Idaho for a few days. I'll be honest with you. I was talking with a friend of this channel that may be joining me out there. And it's going to be very exciting. I'm really excited. I want to go out, see what the atmosphere is going to be out inside of Boise. Maybe we have an opportunity to see Kohberger go into the courtroom. I think it's going to be really interesting. So that is on the plan, the plate here for LTL to go out at least a couple days out in Boise and see this case live outside that courtroom and spend some time out there. All right, here we go.
What it showed.
Yeah, so this was just another crazy thing buried in this paperwork. There's a photo right in the document of Bryan Kohberger on November 13th, which is, of course, the day of the murders. That's Sunday, 10:31 a.m. They apparently found this photo on his phone. It's a selfie. To me, it looks like, I don't know what you think, it looks like it's in the bathroom with like a shower kind of, you can almost see like almost like a shower curtain, some stuff like that in the
The
background.
shower nozzle certainly behind
Yeah,
him.
the
He's
shower
for
nozzle.
sure, he's for sure standing in front of a shower.
Yeah. And he's kind of smirking, and it's a selfie. And the
And his hair looks wet.
prosecution, yeah, like he's just showered.
He looks like he is
and-
freshly showered with thumbs up and a big old proud look on his face, right?
It's so
Like, is that
weird.
an
It's so
overstatement?
weird.
It's
Yeah,
bizarre.
it's so weird to think about, again, and it's until proven guilty, but if he is guilty of this, to think that he's taken this selfie with the thumbs up
Bizarre.
kind of thing, right? Hours after.
Done.
What
Got
would
it done. I cleared
Yeah.
it. Aces. I did it.
6
I
hours.
pulled it off.
Yeah, 6 hours after the murders. But the prosecution is now trying to use this photo. That's why it's in this document. They want to bring this in and show the jury because Dylan, the roommate, the surviving roommate, said bushy eyebrows. That's what she said in a couple of the interviews with police after the murders, that the person who came into the house who she saw had bushy eyebrows. So they want to show this photo to the jury to say, hey, this is the most recent photo we have after the murders. What do you think about, do you think it matches up with the eyebrows comment?
Here's Bryan Kohberger's selfie with his eyebrows 6 hours after the murder. Do you see bushy eyebrows here? They are not alterable within 6 hours after the murder. You can't think for a moment that he's been plucking them or messing with them at this point.
Right.
I mean, the most proximate photo to the murders to show these eyebrows. But I mean, I'll bet you the folks in the police department and the prosecutor's office did a jig when they found this photo, not just to show the bushy eyebrows, but to show the shower and the
And can you imagine, like, they're going through that phone and they're like, oh God, he took a photo at fucking 10:30 in the morning to memorialize what he did. I mean, can you imagine that? You're flipping through and then all of a sudden you've got this photo and you're like, my God, like what, if he is the guy, which I think he is, what he did, before this is just crazy.
Thumbs up.
To think about
because
that.
really, if he's guilty, Bryan, if he is guilty, he is showered and posing and proud less than 6 hours after butchering 4 innocent kids.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the photo again. The thumbs up. He's got headphones in. There's clearly the shower nozzle behind, the shower rod. He's so skinny. And it's just, it's a creepy photo, no matter what way you look at it.
It is. It's disturbing. Okay, I want to move on to the other thing. Again, it's just this was just volumes and volumes of information in these documents that were released. The text messaging. Last week, the defense had put a motion to eliminate about some of the messages, or was it the state? Oh God, I'm mixing them all up. It was the state, right? The state's motion.
Yeah, I think it was the state. Yeah.
Okay. So, and in that motion were a series of text messages that we had not seen before. And it was really interesting to see Dylan and Bethany and all their activity, as the murders are happening, but they're by no means complete. And not only that, there was an end, right? Like it sort of ended at around 4:20, I think, in the nighttime. Well, in the response to the motion to eliminate, the defense actually fills out a lot of the text message.
Yeah, and now we find out that Xana was possibly alive up until no, wait, what did they say? They said her last communication was at like 3:00 in the morning. I think they're going to talk about that here. If I remember.
And social media activity
is interesting
between Dylan and Bethany and who they were texting, calling, snapping, and the searching that they were doing on their social media. So can you get comfy for a second, Bryan? I'm going to
yes,
can't wait to hear this.
And then I'm going to
heard all of
pause
this.
when I think there's something that you and I need to make mention of, because it's pretty significant stuff as it goes. Okay. And you at home, get a drink and a pillow, because this is rough.
Yeah.
So it starts at about 2:10 a.m. Dylan Mortensen texts an Uber driver asking if he was driving, and the Uber driver texts back confirming he's driving. At 2:53, Maddie Mogan calls Bethany Funk. So we know that at 2:53, Maddie's still alive and she's still on her phone, right? Then an hour passes. At 3:51, Dylan is still awake. We know that because she's creating a new contact on her phone. At 4:19, this is where it's so critical, right? Bethany calls Dylan before Dylan starts to call everybody in the house, okay? and all those calls go unanswered. So at 4:19, Bethany has called Dylan, and at 4:20, Dylan calls Xana. So maybe Bethany downstairs heard something and called up to Dylan. Hey, what's going on up there at 4:19? 4:20, Dylan's calling Xana, who's on the same floor as her. Then at 4:20, Dylan calls Kaylee, who's upstairs. Then at 4:20, Dylan calls Bethany, who's downstairs. They're on the phone for 41 seconds. Then at 4:21, Bethany calls Xana. And then 4:21, Dylan calls Maddie. Then 4:22, Bethany calls Maddie. 4:22, Bethany calls EC, which we take to possibly be Ethan Chapin at this point. And then come the text messages. Some of them we've seen before in that prosecution.
So they're
motion in
hearing
limine
stuff.
document.
They're hearing stuff at this point. That's why all the calls are going out. So it was very violent in that house. I truly believe it was very violent in that house. I don't think this was a quiet attack. It was very violent.
4:22, Dylan
A lot of
to
screaming
Bethany.
going on,
She
too.
says, no one's answering. And then 4:22, Dylan to Bethany. I'm really confused right now. Dylan to Kaylee. Kaylee. Dylan to Kaylee. What's going on? Bethany sends a Snapchat message going out at 4:23. Also at 4:23, Bethany says to Dylan, yeah, dude, WTF? Like, what the F?
He was, and there was reports that he was acting weird, and that was the whole confrontation at that point. If I remember, there was a confrontation with his teacher, and then ultimately he was let go weeks later, and then he went back to on break to Pennsylvania, and I think they talked about that with his dad in the car ride home. So this was very violent. I don't think that this was quiet at all. There was a lot of you're seeing it in these calls, the text messages, what they're talking about. And again, you got to remember, these are kids. And what I said at the very beginning of the stream is that these are sounds that these kids never heard inside the house before. And you can see the panic in their voice. They're panicking not in their voice, but this text stream, the calls, what they're saying in their text messages. It's just crazy to think about.
Then 4:23, Bethany texts Dylan, Xana was wearing all black. And I'm struggling with this one, Brian, because there's no question mark afterwards. And it doesn't make sense for Bethany downstairs in the basement to say Xana was wearing all black, because she wouldn't have seen that movement that Dylan saw on the second floor.
Or maybe in one of those phone calls between Bethany and Dylan, they're like, I think I saw Xana and she's in all black. Like, what is going on? Could be something like that, right? And then they started texting and they're trying to confirm Xana wasn't wearing all black. And that's why I said, when I saw this picture of Kohberger, I felt, when I looked at it, I said, Jesus, he looks so feminine. And I was like, I wonder if he was trying to lose all this weight to try to look like a female. So we went into that house, if he was spotted or seen, he could just get out really quick or someone says, well, the killer wasn't a male, it was a female. It had a feminine look to them. Could be a possibility, It's just wild.
I'm thinking Dylan might have been on the phone with her and mentioning something about someone in all black.
Thanks, Lindy.
And Bethany's texting her like, wait, what?
Right.
Wait, Xana's in all black?
Or
that
maybe
would make sense there.
Or is it that Dylan was saying, oh my God, I saw this person in all black. It's so scary.
Hello, Nan.
And
if you are a follower of my channel, obviously you are because you're hearing the chat. If you did not watch last night's stream, it is an awesome Karen Reed stream. We had Nan Gallagher, attorney on. We had Mike from the Young Jerks, and we had Todd McGee, retired Mass State Police. We talked in depth about the firing of former trooper Michael Proctor. And God, that was such a great stream. I looked at the numbers, Nan. On YouTube, we had 2,400 people, and on Twitter, we had 900 people watch. There was over 3,000 people watching that stream last night. So awesome. Now we got to get those 3,000 people in here to start watching some of these Idaho streams, because This case is going to get hot. It's going to be the summer case. I'm telling you, they're saying that it's going to go 3 months, starts in August. It's going to go 3 months. And I know I will. I'll be gripped to the television every time I can.
Bethany be telling Dylan, no, Xana was wearing all black. Like, chill out.
Oh, good one. Yeah, no, you're right.
You know what I
Xana was
mean?
wearing all black tonight,
Yeah.
so don't freak
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're
Like
right.
it was probably just Xana. You know?
You know what? That's brilliant, because then Dylan says to Bethany right away, I'm freaking out right now. And then says to Bethany, no, it's like a ski mask almost.
Yeah.
A ski mask almost. And then Bethany's like, STFU, like, shut the F up.
Me too.
And Bethany goes, actually? Like,
Nan's going to join me on one of these Idaho streams. We're going to kind of talk through some of this stuff soon. We've been talking about it, and I think she's going to come up and do an Idaho stream with me and get everybody kind of reinvigorated about this, because this case is going to be very big, and I'm very curious how this is going to shake out, just as much as with the Karen Reed case. But this is kind of the case I've been kind of waiting for. I know a lot of people have been waiting for it, almost 3 years.
as if to say, wait, hold it. Ski mask, actually? And then Dylan says to Bethany, like he had something over his forehead and little end mouth. And then 424, Dylan says to Bethany, I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out. 424, Bethany says to Dylan, so am I. Dylan says, phone is about to die. F. Bethany to Dylan, come to my room. Run down here. And then at 424, right when Bethany has said to Dylan, run down here, Dylan then calls Ethan again, or calls EC, which I take to mean Ethan Chapin. 424.
Yep.
Dylan texts something to Bethany, and it's not in this document. Bethany, 425, texts something to Dylan, and it's not in this document. And then at 427, Dylan makes an outgoing call, doesn't say to whom. Sometime around now, at 427, we think that it's possible Dylan actually made that run to go downstairs to spend the night in Bethany's room. But she did go out into that hallway after being terrified and frozen in shock, that the probable cause affidavit said. And she did go down to Bethany's room at that point. Do you remember reading that in another document, that she spent the night in Bethany's room down in the basement?
Vaguely. Do you?
I think it was in the first affidavit.
But someone on my team does. They remember, and I thought, oh, I must have been off that night or something.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I don't remember it. I've heard you talking about it and thinking it. Maybe that's why. There's been so many documents now. I don't remember it being in black and white, though. I don't think.
I think it's out there. I think our podcast audience, listen, comment and rate and say
someone
everything
will
about
know.
this.
Yeah,
you're gonna know for sure. Our audience is gonna know for sure. So we're now at 427. Dylan has an outgoing message to Snap. Dylan has another outgoing message to Snap, and then Dylan calls Kaylee. We're back to that now, right?
27.
We're calling again upstairs to the roommates on the 3rd floor. Then Dylan calls Xana. Then Bethany calls Maddie. Then Bethany calls Maddie again. Then Bethany calls Kaylee again. And then Bethany calls Kaylee a second time. And then we're at 432, and Dylan texts Kaylee. We don't have the verbatim there. It's not included in the doc. And then 434, Bethany accesses Snapchat and then does Instagram at 437. My thinking here, tell me if I'm wrong. They're trying all different ways to message. Snap, Insta, text. Like, do you think that's what they're doing when they're accessing Instagram and accessing Snap?
Yeah, or I'm just thinking with my friends, you're texting for something, but then they might be sending each other like reels on Instagram too or something. You know what I mean?
I don't know. At 437, they're still all freaked out. I think at this point, Dylan's gone flying down into Bethany's room. They're trying to call. No one's answering. Maybe that's why they said, let's try Snap. Let's try Insta. Let's try Messenger on Insta. Let's try Messenger on Snap.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Yeah, not just saying I'm really, really confused right now. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't use Snapchat. I'm on it, but I don't use it very often. And Instagram, and it might actually show if they're up and using. Like if they're on, it'll show that they're actually on it. Maybe that's what they were trying to do at 427.
See if they're active. See if it's red. If it's red, a red message. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Okay, so now things go dark for about 3 hours. It's actually less than 3 hours, but Bethany's the first one to get up at 7:30 in the morning. I thought that was interesting, given that they were all out drinking the night before, up till 4:37 in the morning. Are you surprised that she's up at 7:30?
Yeah, and calling her dad at 7:30 and then again at 8 a.m. and then calls home at 8. I mean, you're going to go through these, but that stood out to me. She called her dad at 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday after being up late partying and only getting 3.5 hours of sleep. My theory is that they didn't know that it was something really serious during all of this, and that they just were kind of creeped out, maybe something. But then I don't know. I'd be curious to know what the call was about. Just thinking back to college, like I didn't normally call my parents at 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday after
No.
partying. You know,
Definitely not. But I'll bet you that these
I
parents.
mean, it could be like, Dad, last night I heard something crazy. I'm not sure. It could be something like that. Last night there was, this commotion. This whole kind of after morning is very strange, and it's weird. And I know that's where all these conspiracy theories came out. But I just keep going back to like the Gen X. The Gen Z. That whole Gen Z kids. They're just kids. And they're not they don't like confrontation. And I'm trying not to pick on Gen Zers, but this is my experience with them. Like I always use the example, like, oh, hey, the boss is being really mean, or they said something, and I'm like, well, did you go talk to them? Did you try to square it up? Oh, I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna do that. I don't want to cause any problems. I mean, that's kind of my experience. So
Parents are going to be called as witnesses, and I bet this is
Yeah.
all going to get filled in on trial. What did Bethany say when she called you at 7 in the morning? Well, she calls dad at 7. She calls dad again at 8. She calls another number at 8. She calls home at 8:01. She calls home at 8:02, and dad finally calls back at 8:09. But I'll bet that
Yeah.
that call at 8:09, she had something to say, and maybe it was.
let me just pause this again really quick. I'm sorry I'm pausing so much. Christina, again, thank you for the $5. Yes, I see you in the chat. Thank you so much. And then Mary Bell just sent $10 on Venmo as well. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. It helps keep the lights on in the studio. All right, let's keep playing here.
Dad, I'm super freaked out. There was a guy in the house last night, and I can't get a hold of any of my roommates. I think I need maybe a
Yeah.
better lock on my door, or maybe something like that.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just think that's going to be interesting to me that they, again, it just seemed, it struck me because it's so early to be calling your parents on a Sunday.
Nan, I can't make sense of that. I don't know. It is weird. It's odd. I mean, the only other thing that I could think of is that I try to tend to think, like, when did their friends get there? Or maybe they had conversations with her father and said, look, I just went upstairs. I saw what I saw, and they're going to fucking think that we did it. We're the only two people that are alive in this house. What do we do? But then you would think maybe your father would pick up the phone and call 911, or he would say, call 911. I don't know. But I always thought, like, they didn't speak up until late in the morning, or until some friends got there to verify everything, that maybe they were afraid that they're going to pin it on them. There's 4 dead people in the house. Or at that time, maybe they only saw 1 dead person and they can't get in touch with anybody else, and they're too afraid to go upstairs, and they're like, look, they're going to pin this on us. It's strange. It's very odd. Nan says, neither can I. Now that we know that one of them frantically appears to have contacted her parent around 8 a.m., it's odd. But I still don't think, and again, I know there's tons of conspiracies. Oh, they're all in on it. I don't think they're in on it. I think they would have snuffed this out by now. 3 years later, they would have snuffed all this out. They would have caught someone in something. But it is crazy. All right, let's keep playing here.
When you only got 3 hours of sleep,
I know. Now, this is interesting because by 8:05, that's just between Bethany calling.
Here we got Guns and Glitter says, I think they were too scared to check, so she was probably calling your dad to come over to check on them, afraid to call the cops just in case it was nothing. Could be. And we know that there's been multiple noise complaints there before. The cops have shown up. There's body cam footage of all out there. Could be. It is still a mystery.
Mom and her dad calling her back. And they're in the same room together. Bethany and Dylan are in the same room downstairs in Bethany's room in the basement. At 8:05, Dylan is back on social media and is on Instagram at this point. She's on Instagram for 2 hours, Bri. She's on Instagram from 8:05 till 10 a.m. I mean, I suppose you could be on it and not active. You could put your phone down. It doesn't say if she's active on it, like scrolling or texting or messaging.
She's probably laying in bed, I bet. Laying in bed,
think.
falling a little bit, waking. I mean, we've been there. You scroll
Hungover.
some more, you're kind of half asleep,
Yep. But she also she's also texting Maddie again. Let me go through this timeline. So 8:05 to 10 a.m. Dylan's on Insta, but 8:41 to 8:42 Bethany's taking photos.
How about this? I don't know. I'm just going to throw a theory out there. With the texting Maddie and Kaylee, maybe they didn't know that they came home. Right? Like, hey, what's going on? Or did they know they came home? Did they know that everybody was upstairs? I can't remember because it's been so long and there's been so many documents. And maybe that's why she's texting Maddie again. We don't know what's in those conversations, but I don't know. This whole thing is just, it's weird.
Selfies, maybe whatever. Maybe she's taking pictures of Dylan. I don't know. Doesn't seem like they think anything's wrong, though. If you're taking pictures, maybe it's not something you're worried about. 9:04, mom texts Bethany. So dad has called Bethany. Now mom texts Bethany. We don't get the verbate here. 10 a.m. Dylan messages on Snap, incoming and outgoing. 10:01.
That's what's going to fill in a lot of the gaps when we start seeing the verbate. What was going on? What were they talking about? It's all, it's being blanked out. So that has a lot to do with everything here too. What were in those conversations? What were they texting? What were they saying? It would give more context to what's going on here.
10:03, Dylan's on Insta. 10:03, 10:04, Dylan's on Indeed. 10:04 to 10:23, Dylan messages incoming and outgoing on Snap. 10:23, Dylan texts Maddie. Here's something interesting. Again, I don't use Instagram very much to message people. My nephews and nieces do, and a lot of other people do. I don't. I use texting,
that helps,
but kids do. Young kids do, and here she is on Insta, Indeed, text. Do you think she's using all these platforms again to try to reach out to the roommates?
Maybe the Indeed, and I'm not an expert on Indeed, but I think that's a job site. Like that's where you can see job postings. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like was she kind of on the side looking for a little like a part-time job? Or I don't know. You know what I mean? I thought that was
weird.
Kind of interesting how that one
Bizarre.
popped up.
Maybe, right? And then she's texted Maddie again. We don't know, but 10:24 to 25 back on Insta. 10:30 to 10:45. She's messaging on Snap, in and out. After about 35 minutes at 11:21, somebody identified as JM texts Bethany. Verbatim's missing. We don't know what said. Do you recognize those initials, JM?
I didn't.
I don't.
And not
No.
Bethany.
I don't.
Yeah, I bet our listeners and our viewers, guys, you got to jump in and put it in the comments if you have some thoughts about who JM is at this point. 10:56 to 11:29, Dylan's back on Insta and messaging on Snap. 11:29, she texts Kaylee. She's still trying, right? Again, this is amazing to me, Brian. They're in the same.
I'm telling you, I don't think they knew that they were upstairs. I don't think they knew that they were home. And that's why maybe the constant text to Kaylee and Maddie. It's interesting.
Same house. They're 2 staircases apart. They've been trying to message each other since 4:00 in the morning, and they just keep messaging. Nobody thinks to open the door and yell, right? Hey!
I mean, they probably think that they're sleeping, like
Maybe.
they're probably maybe thinking the person's still asleep. Yeah, I think
maybe because Maybe they didn't realize everybody came home that night. And then you're downstairs and you hear all this crazy commotion. I understand this, the screaming, or maybe they heard a lot of thumping or whatever it may be. I don't know. Maybe they thought it was a prank. It is odd. I can't wrap my head around it. I can't. It's been a while. I've thought about this a long time, and now that we're seeing text streams and we heard the 911 call, it is odd. But listen, I'm not in their shoes. Lucid, thank you so much for the 5. Says, let's say she was calling her dad just to say hi. You would assume he'd ask how her weekend night was, and it would trigger her memory to share what she heard. Possibly, yeah. Or maybe she didn't want to worry her dad. Oh, everything's great. We didn't, everything's been good. But I would guess if you're calling your parent at 7:30 in the morning, you'd probably say a little something weird happened last night. Maybe they're just partying. Probably all fell asleep. They're all drunk. They were just being loud. You know how it gets. You called me before and told me how crazy it gets there. Could be something like that. It's crazy. This is the $1 million question,
But if
that's probably what it was.
If they're freaked out though enough to I'm calling mom, I'm worried about the guy in the house last night. If that's why they're calling mom and dad, right? If that's why Bethany's calling mom and dad, you would think he'd be like, I gotta go upstairs and talk to the girls. God, guys,
I wonder if that's really why.
Thanks,
this guy
man.
in the house last night.
It'll be interesting to find out. Maybe that's not why she was calling him mom and dad.
I think it might not have been.
You'd think if she was that worried and told her parents, I would think she would have gone up to check on them, or she would have called 911 sooner or something.
If she was that freaked out about the guy in the house last night, to call dad and mom and say, yeah, weird, something really weird happened last night.
Yeah.
You would think that they would also be freaked out enough to go up and knock on Maddie's door, knock on Kaylee's door, knock on Xana's door and say, guys, are you up? Did you see what happened last night? Who was that guy? No, that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
So 10:56 to 11:29, Dylan is on Instagram and messaging on Snap. 11:29, Dylan texts Kaylee again, but we don't know what said. 11:29 to 11:32, Dylan's on Instagram, messaging on Snap. 11:35, Dylan's on Yik Yak. Okay. Yik Yak, for anybody who doesn't know, is a social platform that's a small radius where you can it's like a message, it's a community message board. You can go on Yik Yak and find out wow, was I ever wasted at that party last night? Did you guys see that guy pass out at the such and such bar? Maybe, Brian, she's going on Yik Yak to say, to see if anybody posted anything weird about a guy in a ski mask and wearing all black in their neighborhood.
She could have. I'm still going back to your theory of, though, that she's just bored in bed. I think she's just laying in bed, half asleep. I just think of the random apps that I might open, eBay. I don't know, something. I'm just bored.
Yeah. And maybe Yik Yak was to look and see, wow, was that party ever great last night? I wonder if anyone's commenting about it. Maybe that's all she's on Yik Yak about. Then she goes on TikTok at 11:36. Then she messages again on Snap at 11:37, but we don't have the verb 8. Then at 11:39 to 40, Dylan and her dad text back and forth. Verb 8's missing. Then Bethany at 11:49 calls JM. Still don't know who JM is. 11:50, JM texts Dylan. 11:44 to 11:50, Dylan's on Insta. Then at 11:50, Dylan calls EA, whom I believe is Emily Aland, Hunter Johnson's girlfriend. And Hunter Johnson is one of the fraternity brothers who came over and eventually made the discovery and said, get out, get out, get out. We think it's him who says, get out, get out, get out, get out of the house. But that's it. Just a one phone call to Emily Alant. Then at 11:51, JM, again, mystery JM, texts Dylan. 11:51 to 11:55, Bethany and JM text back and forth. So they're all talking. Dylan, Bethany, and JM are all talking back and forth in this whole period of time. Then at 11:54, Dylan is back on Instagram. This is weird. This is weird. 11:54 to 11:57. Dylan's on Insta, but at 11:56, a minute before, Bethany calls 911. So I'm trying to figure that out. Can you? Is there any scenario where you could see Dylan scrolling on Insta from 11:54 to 11:57, where Bethany's freaking out and calling 911?
Or Dylan just left her Instagram app open, you know what I mean, while they were talking about what the heck is going on. I think this is bad. Like, they're still not responding. You know what I mean?
You could be right there, because 11:51 to 11:55, Bethany and JM are texting back and forth, and she could be walking upstairs at that point, right? They could be walking upstairs and knocking on Xana's door, the girls, and Bethany is freaking out and says, Dylan, I'm really worried about this. Like, JM and I are texting. I'm really worried. Like, we're upstairs now. And maybe you're right. Maybe Dylan leaves her phone at that point.
And the other thing is, like, when you read all of these out, I'm just thinking of like younger people I know, my younger cousins who are in college. You've got like your boys. I mean, these kids, like, and I text a lot, but they're different apps opening, this person, that person, copy, paste, this app, Snapchat. You know what I mean? Like, this is what they kind of do, I think.
They're fast. They're fast and furious with messaging and checking and scrolling and messaging, like back 100%. And forth between Instasnap, TikTok, Instasnap. It's pretty astounding. I'm just trying to imagine what happened before you dialed 911, because the first thing out of Dylan's mouth is terrified. Something happened.
My guess is they went up.
Remember?
They finally went up to go check on Kaylee. I think
Kaylee?
They finally said.
No,
I don't think they
checked on Kaylee. I think they went to check on Xana, because they're only talking about Xana being unconscious.
Or Xana. I think, one of them. I think that finally no response. Let's go. Like you said, they finally went into the room. Let's go. It's almost noon now.
Right.
And then,
But she went from 11:54 to 11:57 on Instagram to being terrified on that 911 call. And why is Bethany calling 911, but Dylan is the one on the phone? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's interesting. Bethany dials 911, but Dylan is the one on the call, freaked out terrified from the very beginning.
I think, again, just the passing of the phone around. And I mean, they were probably sleeping in the same bed. They're right there next to each other. You know?
It's funny. And I'm glad that you said this, Guns and Glitter. I like Ashley Banfield a lot too. I know a lot of people give shit to her, but I love the combination back and forth of her and Brian Enton. That's why I play these videos. I know there's a ton of channels that cover this, and it gets very in-depth and weird and on a lot of them. But I think they describe it the best. And this is the way that I would kind of spitball it with my friends. I mean, this is the same way when I started first covering this case. I used to have a couple people that would come up on the panel, and this is how we would spitball it. And I think they do it in a way that everybody can follow it. And it just, it's like we're kind of sitting around the campfire and kicking this case around and saying, well, what about this? And what about that? And I'm glad that they went through the documents. I haven't had the ability to go through it. I've been so tied up with the Karen Reed case. But I knew that they did this, and I knew it came out really well. And it's definitely worth playing and listening to.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. But I wonder if all that, like everything from, JM and Dylan and JM and Bethany talking and texting back and forth, I think maybe that's the point where they're like, we can't get in the door. Xana's door is locked. She's not answering. We can't get hold of Ethan. We're really freaked out. We're worried that maybe they OD'd, because that's the worst thing I'm thinking they're thinking. The worst
it's
thing
just so weird. Like, even when you go back to the beginning, so we think the murders happened between 4:04 and 4:20. That's when Kohberger, or allegedly got to the house.
Yeah.
It's just weird when you look at these texts, like 3:51, Dylan creates new contact in her phone. 4:19. It's
4:19 is the noise, right? 4:19 is when all the weirdness starts, because the noise is happening. So I think the murders.
That's when Bethany calls Dylan. But it's just weird to think, I don't know. It's just.
It's also weird that
4 people to be stabbed to death.
I know it's weird that Bethany
screaming
Well, I'll tell you something about that. Bethany in the basement is calling Dylan on the middle floor.
Yeah.
And what I learned about that house from a from a tenant who used to
Interesting.
live there
Here we
in
go.
the basement across from Bethany. So if you're looking at the house, it's the bottom room on the right, directly what would be underneath
With a blood.
Xana's room.
Yep.
So the tenant who used to live in that room said we were all different tenants. We all had locks on our doors, and we weren't housemates or roommates. We were tenants who got to use, shared communal
common
space, like
areas,
the living
right.
room, the kitchen, that kind of stuff. But we all lived in our rooms separately. He said, when I was in my room, I could barely hear
Wow.
anything. I couldn't hear stuff that was going on the second floor.
Wow.
And forget the third floor. Because of the way the foundation is built up the hill, the floor level of the second floor is behind the
And this is why I got fucking mad. Why and when they destroyed and teared down that house. Here's my point. Because, something just fell off my desk. Because you cannot recreate acoustics inside of an area. This room has acoustics inside of it. It's just the way that this room is. If I walk into that room, it's different. If I walk into the hallway, it's different. You will never get that sound, what it sounds like in here, the reverberation off these walls, the acoustics inside this place, the way that it feels when I sit here, because your body is sending out sensory. You can feel it. You can feel what a room feels like, especially if you're familiar with it. You're in your bedroom, your living room. You can kind of feel that space. And it's ridiculous that they tore this house down, because it would have been great. Here you go. Let's put a jury member down inside that room, and let's try to make some noise up on the third floor. Can you hear this? Let's do it on the second floor. Can you hear this? So it would have helped. It would have helped. Yeah, I know they went in, they digital scanned the whole place, but you're not going to be able to ever recreate that. And that is, I think that would have been a huge piece of evidence. That house was a huge piece of evidence in this case, and they fucking destroyed it. They destroyed it.
floor level of the basement. You're not sharing a lot of floor level, if any. And the third floor is a little bit different. But the basement, you can barely hear anything, according to that guy.
Wow.
So Bethany in the basement is calling up to Dylan, and they're talking about Xana's wearing all black, it's just odd. I wonder if Bethany really did hear anything.
Yeah, I remember now the guy you're talking about that you had on your show. I remember when he said that, how he couldn't hear anything. Yeah. And it makes sense when you think about the house. It's such a weird house. It's like, it really is just kind of like the perfect storm, the way this went down, They
shouldn't have knocked it down. They shouldn't have knocked it down for the very reason of it's been so hard for me as a journalist and you as a journalist to get our heads through that house.
Why would they do that?
The weirdness of all of it. Just the fact that you think that Zen is on the floor directly above the room below her. No,
it was all
it's not like that. They don't share a perfect, vertical space.
Staggered.
It's a zigzag house that goes up a hill,
Yeah.
Okay. I want to do one more thing here, actually, too, but there's something else in these docs that was really amazing, and it's the driving map.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Let me grab it.
This is
I love the way it's color coded. It helps to look at this, but walk me through what you see in this white Elantra that's basically pegged time after time after time after time.
Real quick, I just want to pause this before we get into it. And this is going to be interesting because this is kind of a new updated timeline. But we got 510 watching on Twitter. Thank you for joining us on Twitter. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, you can come on over here. You can find me on LTL Media. Come check us out. If not, we have about 184 people here tonight on YouTube, and I do appreciate that. So we got, we have some eyes on this, and I plan on trying to do at least one of these a week and get reinvigorated about the case. Because it is coming around. It's gonna happen. It's gonna come up to case quick if this does happen in August. All right, here we go.
Time after time, circling the house at 1122 King Road.
Yeah,
and
I
then
agree.
Moving past all these neighbors' houses as well.
Yeah, so there was a security camera at the house next to where the murders happened on King Road. That's the blue box that you see. So these are, and this is new. I haven't seen this specific of data before this
I hadn't
release.
either.
So these are all the times that the white Elantra drove by this surveillance camera right next to where the murders happened. 3:30 a.m., 3:33 a.m., 3:38 a.m., 3:40 a.m., 3:56 a.m. So it's just circling, and then 3:58 a.m. and then again at 4:04 a.m., which is when prosecutors believe that he went in to kill them between
And made
4:04
entry.
and made entry. And then you look at the yellow, and these are other nearby surveillance cameras. The yellow box again, 3:30. Just going by, making these circles. And then even over on the other side, this is just a couple blocks away, but he was allegedly kind of circling the area, and they've got that on all of these different
Building
cameras.
up the confidence to do it.
Well, yeah. I mean, they've got 1122 King Road with all those times you listed. Then they've got like right next door. Well, it's just a little bit over an address on Linda Lane with another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times that he's driven by 3:30, 3:39, 3:56, 4:05, 4:07. That's interesting that the white Elantra is still driving at 4:07. So then the next one on Linda Lane has him driving by at 3:29. So if it's Kohberger, he's sure been there for a while, scoping things out. Then there's another one way over on Ridge Road, 3:29 and 4:01 a.m. That's the orange one. Then way down on the map is Paradise Drive, 3:35 and 3:48. And then 3:28, this is my assumption, if it's him, he's coming in on South Main Street. He's coming in towards the King Roadhouse.
Yep.
And there's another map too, Ashley. I don't know if you've seen it, that they released that shows the route that they believe he took to the murder scene.
It's
which
like
is
back
interesting.
road,
It's back roads.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know it. I can see it in my head because I've driven that back road before. It's not the way you would go. It's not the easiest way to get there. It's you go back and loop around this kind of weird curvy neighborhood, hilly neighborhood, and come around the backside.
Yeah. And I think that's super fascinating because you drove it and you showed us and you can't it's not like city streets. It's not a grid. It's windy and tricky and you kind of have to know your way. And so if it's Kohberger, if the killer is Kohberger, that guy did so much surveillance in the months before the murder and knew his way well. He'd been in and out of that neighborhood. He'd been spotted on surveillance multiple times, many days and months before the murders. And so it would make sense that he's kind of got it down pat, but maybe is worried and panicking and freaking out a little bit and has to drive by the house a few more times. Like, can I do it? Do I have the guts? Am I really going to do it? Am I really going to pull this off? Have I checked off every box? Have I, as a criminologist, have I done it exactly according to the checklist to make sure I don't get caught? That's what this map says to me.
It's just weird to think of getting his PhD in criminology, studying criminals. Like, did he not think there were ring cameras? Did he not think there were surveillance cameras? He's in, in the same car driving around, and yet you go through all of this trouble with the gloves and getting rid of evidence allegedly, and going through the trash can. That part's a little strange. Honestly, if I was his defense, that's something I would bring up.
Oh, sure. Of course. But my God, if I had a dime for every criminal trial that I've covered in this very, very long career of mine, for criminals who thought they were smarter than everyone else and thought that they'd done all the right things only to be tripped up by like a toll tag. I covered a murder in which a woman killed her husband, and it was the toll tag that she didn't even think about on her car. Gauging her, going all these places where she said she wasn't that night. And so, listen, I got to say, he's not a doctorate in it yet, right? I don't know how far into the program he got, but man, if this is him, does he have hubris? And that's going to be his downfall, right? The Achilles was how much he thought he knew more than everyone else.
Yeah. And this is all, when the picture they're going to paint at this trial is going to just be, and we're just, think about it. There's so much more to come. I just can't believe how much we didn't know. And these document dumps happen. Imagine what we still don't know. Like you were saying that, I don't think that they have the knife.
No.
I think we would know that by now, but there's just, I mean,
You don't know. We don't know. Maybe they do show up in court and they go, here's the knife. You know, I've always kind of said that from the beginning too. But that's the thing. I think people always like, they just assume, like I always watch the online chatter in this case because it's very interesting. And we just get a little bit of it. And there's no way he could have done it. And you start looking at, like I said, back in those documents in 2023, all the sealed documents, they're sealing off Yik Yak and they're sealing off Amazon, K-Bar knives. I mean, it's kind of telling you, when we started going through all these, I remember picking through them. It's like you can kind of tell what's going on, but we don't know for fact. But now we are, because everything is becoming unsealed. And you can go back to that history and say, oh, okay, I understand why the Amazon was sealed. Now we have some information because he bought the K-Bar knife and we saw K-Bar. So it's interesting how this is all starting to come together, the puzzle pieces. But I think the defense is going to have a bunch of problems in this. All right, let's finish up here. A couple
some of
more
these
minutes.
things I would have thought we'd know by now too. That he bought a knife 8 months before. I would have thought that would have come out. I would have thought that would have been in the probable cause, maybe.
Yeah, I'm trying to search my mind for why all this had to be under gag for 2.5 years. Listen, I've made no secret of how I feel about gag orders. First of all, I'm a journalist, so I have a dog in the fight. But second of all, I'm an American. And I'm so proud of the justice system in this country because I have been to Iraq, I have been to Iran, I have been to Syria, I've been to Saudi Arabia. I know how justice works in other places, and I don't ever want to get near to the garbage that I've witnessed over there. And so when I start seeing judges putting things into secret bags and secret drawers and putting hoods over cameras, I start to say, I smell a rat. The reason that this country is a shining example on the hill is because we are transparent and we, the people, exact justice, not some freaky despot or some, renegade prosecutor or leader. That's why we're great. We, the people, do this. And so the more you hide from the people, the more I get agita. And so I've been really bitchy all through this 2.5 years of gag. And I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I'm having a tough time with a lot of it. Why? And again, Steve Gonzalez told me tonight, he's been so pissed at the speculation all over the internet about who did what and who's terrible. And it's because people don't know. So they're making shit up. And who are the victims of that? Poor Dylan and poor Bethany, who've been excoriated. And I agree with Steve.
Yeah, no, it's true. I forget what the saying is, but it's like darkness
Thank you,
breeds
Danny. Thanks for
something. I mean,
coming
it's
in.
true. Like, you need, when there's nothing, when they're not giving out any information, everybody just has these crazy theories. The YouTubers and all those people go crazy. Something switched with this judge, though. I'll tell you. I mean, in the last month, remember he put out that ruling that he wasn't going to keep stuff secret automatically anymore, and he's kept to it.
Hitler is awesome. I love judges that just want transparency and let's just put it out there. And I'm telling you, this is not the only bit of information we're going to start seeing. I think a lot of this stuff is going to start getting unsealed soon. And we've only seen probably 20% of what has gone on as far as evidence in this case. And we may not see all of it, but I think we're going to get a lot of nuggets from now until August. And I think they're really going to pin this guy down. It's funny. I have seen the trolls quiet down awfully quickly after these recent document dumps. And it's been some vindication, I think, for the families. I mean, I feel really that they're able to kind of settle. They're getting some sureties in this case. And again, Bryan Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty. I've been very upfront. I think he is the guy. I think he has the strongest tie to actually committing this crime and doing it. I think he did. And that's just my opinion. And I can have that opinion. Just like I have the opinion on here. And I know for a fact that Karen Read is 100% innocent. And if you follow me on the Karen Read case, I can have that opinion. I can have that fact. So that's what you're going to get here. I'm very pro-family. I'm very pro-prosecution in this case. I think they got this guy nailed down. I thought that from the start. And a lot of the things that I speculated back then have now come to fruition. So I'm just fascinated about this case. There still is a lot of gaps that need to be filled in. The 911 call is strange. The time in between is strange. Hopefully we get some more information about that, but it will all come out on the stand. All right, here we go. Let's finish up.
I wonder if you
There's a
heard my
lot.
show. I wonder if
You
you
may
heard how many
have.
times I've been yelling and screaming at the top of my
Yeah,
lungs
and when
about
you
secret
smell
justice.
a rat, I've only heard you say that about 3 times in 4 years. So you don't say that all the time. When you smell a rat, we know it's serious.
My senses just start, popping
Yeah.
off. Okay, one more thing I want to talk about before I wrap up, and that is this another big thing we learned in these documents. We knew that the defense was postulating about Bryan Kohberger having autism, and I thought, well, hold it.
Yes.
What is this about? What are you going to try to put
Yeah.
in here now? What you're going to suggest that he's autistic and he shouldn't be executed, or what's the point? And then we got more. We got more in the filings. It isn't just autism.
No, yeah, it's autism spectrum disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder,
crazy.
and developmental coordination disorder. Those are the 3. And there's a whole psychological report that they attach with the doctor who examined Bryan Kohberger. And it's interesting because the defense argues like we're not trying to say that he doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. But we want the jury to know why he acts the way he acts. And I don't know if they're just, a lot of people think Bryan Kohberger is creepy, the way his mannerisms are, the way I've been to the courtroom with him. He is creepy. He's just got a creepy vibe to him. He doesn't look around like a normal person, and maybe that's what maybe they want to get that out there just so people will,
That language it stands out to me. He doesn't, it's not for the purpose of showing that he does not know right from wrong. Knowing right from wrong is insanity, right? If you're fighting something based on insanity, you have to prove that the defendant did not know right from wrong. That's one of the prongs. So when I saw that language, I thought, hold on here. They're not going to fall on an insanity defense here, are they? I think they would have had to file that long before now. But that's the language. You have to prove that your client doesn't know right from wrong. If you want to try to win an insanity case, if you want to win an insanity defense, among other things.
I wonder if this is just, obviously the death penalty is going to come into play here. I wonder if it's, let's muddy the waters, let's a reason that maybe they try to get the jurors to just feel bad for this guy, like just because he's a weird guy and has weird mannerisms and kind of has a killer feel to him, which some people think kind of feels like a serial killer. Like that's actually just because he's got these conditions. Wonder if maybe that's where they're going.
Look, it makes perfect sense. Ann Taylor has Everest in front of her.
I find it a little offensive though, honestly. Like I don't know. I think everybody knows someone who is on the autism spectrum, like a family member or whatever. I don't know. It kind of rubs me the wrong way a little, like, when they bring that stuff into it. What does that really have to do with if he killed somebody,
Listen, if he has it and if he has these other conditions diagnosed, right? Because nobody cares if you just say it. You're going to have some proof of that. If he has these conditions diagnosed, then as a defense attorney, I'd scream that from the mountaintop. Look, don't judge him because he's weird. Everybody loves to judge weird people. He's got these conditions. I don't know what that's going to do to offset buying a K-bar knife and a sheath and a sharpener. That suddenly I never saw it on a manifest. Did you? In any of the search and seizures in Pennsylvania and in Idaho at his apartment, I never saw any K-bar knife or sheath on a manifest.
Well, there wasn't a K-bar knife, but there was a knife that was mentioned at his parents' house on that list. So I don't know if, I don't know what that knife is. I remember there was a knife. They took some bullets. I think they confiscated a gun. So, it's interesting. It's a very interesting case.
And I feel like we saw all the stuff that was on the manifest. Was there some redacted items?
I don't remember there being very many redactions. No, I don't think there were redactions on the manifest that I remember. No.
Right.
Yeah, maybe if the documents are right that he searched Amazon for a knife and sheath after the murders, maybe he thought differently and thought, well, wait a minute. Yes, I bought one. And if he's guilty of this, maybe he threw it away again, threw it in a lake on the way home. But maybe it would be worse if I had one. Maybe it would be worse if I had one in the apartment, even though it has no DNA. It's brand new after the murder, so it has no evidence of the murder at all. Maybe he thought better of it, or maybe he thought differently about replacing the one that he bought with a new one, given the fact that it's probably worse to have one than not have one.
What do you think about him buying, according to the prosecution, the knife 8 months before the murders?
Well, it kind of fits
I mean,
with
do you
all
think
the
he was
stalking
could he have been
allegations.
planning this all this time?
I kind of do. I think it's so weird. Like whether he was planning these girls, and
Planning
Ethan, I think
something.
was such a an unfortunate circumstance. I don't think he was planning to have a guy there because Ethan was big. I think he might have just been planning the perfect murder and then found his victims if he's
Yep.
guilty. Because the stalking allegations, I think they start kind of around summer, don't they? Or they're June-ish, somewhere around June. And some of the kids hadn't even arrived until June or July. So I feel like, and he was new at this. It's not like he had last year to figure out who he liked and who he didn't like, right?
Yeah, right.
Brian, thank you so much for just doing this, right? Just like brainstorming, going through these documents, finding the critical aspects of it, and then sort of helping to figure out what some of this stuff means and how significant it's going to be for the trial. I can't wait to hear what you find next.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's interesting because we were in like a black hole for a while, and now we're
Yeah.
actually getting.
And that's the thing too. And I love the fact that like when they've talked through this discussion, and I'm going to end this, he's going to say, you know, we've been kind of in a black hole for a while because we haven't any information. And even when they were talking, they couldn't even remember. And that's like me. I haven't discussed this in a long time. So I forget names and I forget times. And I know a lot of people have probably stayed up on this, but I've been occupied for the last year and a half. You know what I've been doing here on this channel. So it's been wild, but it's been kind of refreshing to go back and refresh my mind over these. And I want to try to do these, you know, once a week. Maybe we do Friday night Idaho streams here. I don't know. But you know, I want to get refreshed with this case because it's going to be big. It really is going to be big. Let me just check out this super chat really quick. Lucid, thanks for the $5 again. Says he probably realized he left the sheath, so he bought a new one so he could deny that being his before the DNA was known, or even then they say it's planted. Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe he had that thought to rebuy a knife, rebuy a sheath, and put himself in that position. Something I want to leave before we head out here. Let me get this comment from Steve Gonsalves the other day on Banfield. He's going to talk a little bit about the document drops here. And then I want to show someone one quick thing before we head out. So bear with me here, about another 5 or 6 minutes on the stream, and then we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Here we go.
Steve lost his daughter, Kaylee, that tragic morning. We've talked a lot, Steve, over the course of this last 2.5 years. And it's
Thank
been
you,
hard
Lucy.
on
I
you
appreciate that.
more than anybody, just with the gag order and hearing things that make you think there was a chance that maybe Bryan Kohberger could beat the rap. You saw what I saw. You saw what Brian Enton just laid out. There is a knife purchase. There is a sheath purchase, a sharpener, and that selfie and that map. Tell me your thoughts as you see all this new evidence come out.
We've been sitting on this one a little while. I'm glad. I mean, finally. I've always felt like anything coming out of the court that any of the fact finders are going to have to see is the safest thing in the world to show. You know, what could mess this up is a jury hearing all these YouTube people that, like, you know, just make up stuff and call speculation. Speculation is just another word for lying, creative lying or storytelling. But these are facts. So I don't know why we're 2.5 years into this trial or into this process that we're finally letting out the facts. But man, it feels good. It feels good to see the true fact and all the work and everything.
We went over that theory, Sue. I'm going to drop a live in the chat, and I think you're going to want to go back and watch this because I get kind of a timeline on that of the possibilities of what could have happened. And we think that, and again, I have to go back and watch timelines here, but we think that Xana may have had encountered Kohberger in the kitchen And I'll drop this link there. You can click on that, save it later, and you can go back. We call it the encounter. And it's did Xana Kernodle encounter the alleged killer Bryan Kohberger in the kitchen? And you're going to want to go back and watch that stream. Let's just finish up, Steve, and then I got one more thing I want to show you that's going to intrigue all of you, and we'll end on that thought tonight. And thank you all for being here. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you're not, click that thumbs up button. Appreciate the support tonight during this these Idaho streams, the couple of super chats, the Vemos that we got. I do appreciate it. Keeps the lights on here in the studio. All right.
The thing that these guys have done, I just wish we didn't have to wait 2.5 years to see it.
The detail is remarkable, and the photograph of Bryan Kohberger in front of a shower at 10:31 a.m., seemingly very proud. When was the first time you saw that?
Just a few hours ago. You know, that's an FU to Idaho. I just went into your state. I just killed your kids in their beds, and you're not going to catch me. I'm just going to shower up here, clean off the last bit of the evidence, probably take the shower curtain. Who knows where that's at? But yeah, that's a challenge to Idaho. So I hope everyone from Idaho is paying attention. And
thank you, Sue.
We need to bring everything at this guy.
Were you at all made aware that this massive document dump was about to happen tonight, and that we'd see the map, how many times the white Elantra was seen in front of your daughter's house, that we'd see that photograph, that we'd see the evidence, the purchase order for the K-bar knife sheath and the sharpener? Did you know this was coming?
I didn't know when it was coming, but I've seen some of this footage before. I would suspect even the officer's seen some of the stuff. So I know how powerful it is. I know how good it is. I had no clue who I was looking at. I had no clue what I was looking at. I just seen cars. I seen a white Elantra. I seen it come and go. I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't even know what the time of the crime line was, but it's just hard to sit on the truth for so many years and be told that you need to do everything to help the person who killed your daughter. You're supposed to help him. And it's like, yeah, it's very frustrating, because I just want the truth out, and I want people to see what the truth is. Stop listening to these idiots that think, speculation is evidence. It's not. It's absolutely not.
He's
What's
right.
coming out of the courtroom right now is evidence. And the fact finders, they'll decide if it's one way or the other, but it's still facts.
I'll go one further. This is some of the strongest evidence I've seen yet, since they found the sheath and since they found the DNA on the sheath matched Bryan Kohberger. I thought of you immediately, Steve. I thought, man, this is going to be good news for him, because all you want is a case that's strong. Am I wrong in what I imagined you'd feel like?
Yeah. We were torn when this all happened, but I really wanted to embrace and love the community that I'm a part of. I wanted to say that we did everything right and we got the right guy. But then we just, this whole process, and I don't understand it, guys. I'm just a dad trying to rage through this to figure out how to get justice for his daughter. No, nothing holding me back. No rules, no nothing. I'm just trying to get the evidence and the truth for my daughter. So that's what I was doing. But now, 2.5 years later, I've learned there's an order of things and all this stuff, but it feels good to show and highlight all the hard work that the FBI did and Moscow Police Department. It feels good to see that, and it's just a little puzzling why we had to wait so long, but it feels like we're finally getting there, and some of these trolls can go find the bridge that they came from and return to it.
I agree.
Thanks for watching.
I agree, Steve. All right, let's end with this. And in going back to my Google Earth, when that new document dump hit, I went and went through that document and said, these are all the cameras they were looking at. Here's all the cameras. I want to just put your attention to Winco Foods, and I found this one to be extremely interesting. Now, Winco Foods, when you look at the court document, it says Winco Foods, 1700 Pullman Road, Moscow, Idaho. Winco financial records were being called for Bryan Kohberger. in Winco financial records and video surveillance for Dylan Mortensen, Bethany Funk, Kayla Gonzalez, Xander Canodal, Ethan Chapin, and Madison Mogan. I was thinking to myself, could this have been outside of the King Road house the first time that any of these roommates and Bryan Kohberger made contact? Could have seen them in an aisle. Maybe he saw a couple of the girls shopping in there, and they caught his eye, and he started to follow them around inside this Winco Foods. Is it a possibility that this is the first time that they actually made some type of contact? It's an interesting thought, and it is the only piece on this document that calls for records and video at the same time, being at the Kohberger and the roommates being in a common area outside of the King Road house. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So I'll leave everybody with that thought. And I'm going to end this live for tonight. Wednesday thinks it may be true. Bingo. And maybe this will come out. Maybe they got Kohberger and that Winco Foods following, I don't know, Xana around, following Bethany and Dylan Mortensen around, Kaylee and Xana. I don't know. Kaylee and Maddie around. And this is where the initial stalking starts happening. The thing we don't know is that there's no date. There's no time on that video being pulled. There's no date of those records being pulled. But I find it very strange that outside that King Road house, this is the only common area that they're asking for information that has both the suspect and the people that were murdered in that same place. It leads me to believe that there's something there, that this possibly could be the first time. And I know that we heard about the Mad Greek restaurant. Again, that could be a possibility too, because they did call for video footage of the Mad Greek as well in and around that area. So just something to think about. Just something to think about. And I don't know, maybe we come back next Friday night and do another one of these Idaho streams and we can talk all about it again. But I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much for the moderators and members being here tonight. Thanks for the super chats and the Vemos. It helps keeps the lights on in the studio. If you haven't, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on Sunday morning. We're back to Karen Reed. I will have my trusty cohort in here. Lauren DC will be side by side with me, and we're going to take live calls on Sunday morning, the Sunday Super Show. All right, everybody. We'll see you then. I'm going to take tomorrow night off, and I'll see you back on Sunday morning. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for watching. Bye.